So, Mike Johnson is in complete panic mode after several senior GOP leaders just publicly abandoned his latest MAGA-backed spending plan that would have essentially handed Trump unlimited power over federal funding. 3 Republican committee chairs actually walked out of Johnson's emergency caucus meeting yesterday, with one of them telling reporters that the speaker's proposal was constitutional suicide. The plan would have allowed Trump to bypass Congress entirely on spending decisions if he returns to office. But guess what? Even hardcore conservatives are calling this a bridge too far. It's honestly hard to believe Johnson thought he could push this through without massive backlash from his own party. This isn't just about typical Republican infighting. We're talking about a fundamental breakdown in GOP unity, constitutional conservatives openly revolting against MAGA extremism, and Johnson's speakership hanging by a thread. And trust me, the timing couldn't be worse with government funding set to expire in just 11 days. Let me fill you in on what's been happening. So, Mike Johnson became Speaker of the House back in October 2023 after Kevin McCarthy got ousted. He stepped up as the supposed unity candidate who could bridge the gap between MAGA loyalists and traditional conservatives. From the get-go, he positioned himself as someone who could keep both Trump happy and the government functioning. Whether it was defending Trump in the media, blocking Democratic investigations, or pushing through partisan legislation, Johnson really cemented himself as Trump's man in the Speaker's office. But here's where the rubber meets the road. We're now 7 days into this latest crisis. Government funding negotiations have stalled. Federal agencies are preparing for shutdown protocols. Military families are worried about their paychecks. This mess is unfolding because Johnson tried to insert a provision into the spending bill that would grant any future president unprecedented authority to redirect federal funds without congressional approval. And guess who's stuck right in the middle? Yep, Johnson himself. He's supposed to be leading the House through these negotiations. But here's the kicker. Senior Republicans aren't interested in destroying the separation of powers just to please Trump. They want to preserve Congress's constitutional authority over spending. And before we go any further, let's be real for a second. The power of the purse has been Congress's primary check on executive power since 1789. Even the most conservative constitutional scholars agree this is non-negotiable. Now, back to the matter at hand. Reports from around October 25th revealed just how fractured the GOP conference has become. During the closed-door meeting, Representative Ken Buck of Colorado stood up and declared that Johnson's proposal was an abdication of our constitutional duties. He labeled Johnson's plan as anti-conservative and even went as far as to say that any Republican who supports it should be primaried. Talk about strong words. Essentially, Buck was calling Johnson a fake conservative for bowing to Trump's demands instead of defending congressional prerogatives. And this wasn't a private conversation. Within minutes, details of the meeting leaked to Politico, with multiple sources confirming that at least 12 Republicans had voiced strong opposition. This announcement sent shockwaves through Washington because it raised all sorts of questions. If Johnson, Trump's hand-picked speaker, couldn't even keep his own committee chairs in line, what did that mean for the broader MAGA agenda heading into 2025? Now, this isn't the first time we've seen this pattern. Trump's influence over the GOP really only works when members fear the consequences of opposing him. Whenever that fear diminishes or constitutional principles are at stake, Republicans start finding their backbone. We've spotted this pattern time and time. Again, just think about how 12 Republican senators defied Trump on the National Emergency Declaration in 2019. Trump demanded they support his border wall funding scheme, but they chose the Constitution over Trump's wishes, with several facing primary challenges as a result. Then there was the Electoral College certification on January 6th. Despite enormous pressure from Trump, 10 House Republicans voted to impeach him afterward, recognizing that his actions threatened democracy itself, even though most faced severe political consequences. And let's not forget how Senate Republicans blocked Trump's attempt to fire Jeff Sessions in 2018. When Trump wanted to install a loyalist to shut down the Mueller investigation, GOP senators warned they wouldn't confirm any replacement, forcing Trump to back down. Even his own Vice President Mike Pence ultimately chose the Constitution over Trump's demands on January 6th, refusing to overturn the election results despite Trump's public pressure campaign and threats from MAGA supporters. Now, it looks like Johnson is learning the same lesson. This pattern is becoming all too familiar. You can pledge absolute loyalty to Trump and his agenda, but the moment you ask Republicans to completely abandon constitutional principles, even MAGA supporters start having second thoughts. So, what did Johnson do to trigger this rebellion? Well, it all boils down to overreach and miscalculation. The impasse happened because Trump has been demanding that any spending deal include provisions that would enhance presidential power for when he potentially returns to office, while traditional conservatives were trying to maintain basic governmental functions without constitutional violations. Ultimately, Johnson tried to thread an impossible needle since no one was willing to budge. As Speaker, Johnson decided to take an aggressive stance. He drafted language that would allow the president to reprogram funds during national emergencies, and refused to consider alternative proposals. His approach seemed to be just ramming through Trump's wish list. At first, Trump seemed thrilled with this idea. He immediately posted on Truth Social praising Johnson's courage and the notion of taking back presidential power from the deep state. But as the proposal circulated among House Republicans, some issues started cropping up. Committee chairs realized they'd lose oversight authority. Defense hawks worried about military funding being diverted, and fiscal conservatives saw it as abandoning their core principles. While Trump was celebrating on social media, predictably, the GOP conference began fracturing. Polls indicated that Americans were increasingly frustrated with congressional dysfunction, with 67%, according to a CBS News poll from October 24th, saying they blamed Republicans more than Democrats for the budget impasse. This was the moment Johnson began to sweat a little. You see, Johnson values his speakership, maintaining GOP unity, and overall getting reelected. He doesn't want to be tied to another government shutdown that devastates Republican polling. That's definitely not the legacy he seeks. And then Johnson went ahead and made a move that, according to senior Republicans, was a serious misstep. Johnson started threatening primary challenges against Republicans who opposed the plan and figured he should leverage Trump's endorsement power. He even considered stripping committee assignments from dissenting members. But then, when Representative Chip Roy caught wind of all this, he absolutely lost it. In Roy's eyes, threatening members is just political suicide. Using Trump's name to intimidate conservatives? That's pure desperation. Any speaker who dares to abandon constitutional principles is instantly labeled a failure. Here's where it gets interesting. Now, this left Johnson in a tight spot. On one side, he really needs Trump's backing to maintain his speakership. The MAGA base will drop him like a hot potato if Trump gives the signal. On the flip side, he actually has to get down to passing a budget. That means figuring out how to fund the government, avoid a shutdown, and maintain enough Republican support to pass legislation. The tricky part is all of that requires some level of compromise with both Democrats and traditional Republicans who oppose Trump's power grab. So Johnson is caught in a bind. He can either keep trying to please Trump, which means pushing unconstitutional provisions that his own caucus rejects, and that only makes a shutdown more likely and paints Republicans in a bad light. Or he can do his actual job as Speaker, which means negotiating a reasonable budget deal, but that'll definitely make Trump turn against him. It's a tough situation, and that's the mess Trump creates for GOP leaders. He demands complete loyalty and wants them to pursue extreme positions without budging, but then he points fingers when things go south. He's not shy about tossing them under the bus whenever it suits him. This whole scenario is causing major stress within the Republican conference. If Johnson can't even maintain support from his committee chairs and is willing to threaten his own members, every Republican is left wondering if the party has completely lost its way. Those moderate Republicans who are trying to balance conservative principles with pragmatic governance are now worried sick about being primaried. Meanwhile, the Freedom Caucus believes Johnson isn't fighting hard enough and that he's too willing to compromise with the establishment. Things became even more intense when Representative Matt Gaetz, one of Trump's most loyal defenders, broke ranks with Johnson's strategy. He had been pushing for even more aggressive tactics and criticized Johnson for not going far enough in challenging Democratic norms. When someone is aligned with Trump as Gaetz starts criticizing the speaker from the right, you know you're in a world of hurt. The House Rules Committee decided to take unprecedented action. On October 26th, Chairman Tom Cole announced that the committee would not advance Johnson's spending proposal, stating that it contained unconstitutional provisions that violated separation of powers. He pointed out that Article 1 of the Constitution explicitly grants Congress the power of the purse. According to conservative legal scholar Michael Ludig, who appeared on CNN, this is a remarkable moment where principled conservatives are standing up to authoritarian overreach. The Rules Committee's decision to block their own speaker's proposal is virtually unprecedented. The process moved pretty quickly, and Cole recognized the urgency. After all, every day without a budget agreement meant getting closer to a government shutdown. And let me tell you, Cole didn't hold back with his statement. It was a major blow for Johnson's entire strategy. Cole declared that the proposal was constitutionally indefensible and would set a dangerous precedent for executive overreach. That's political speak for saying, you've got no solid ground to stand on here. There's no conservative principle that justifies what you're doing. You're essentially abandoning everything we claim to believe in. A Republican committee chair calling out his own speaker created a real stir. It's a significant move, reminding Johnson that constitutional conservatives won't roll over for Trump. This is a huge deal that rarely happens in party politics. Political experts are noting that we haven't seen this level of GOP resistance to a Trump-backed initiative since the attempt to repeal Obamacare in 2017. David French, a conservative commentator who frequently appears on the Dispatch podcast, went on record and made a statement that really should catch everyone's attention. He said that this rebellion represents the last stand of constitutional conservatism against MAGA authoritarianism. If Johnson's proposal had passed, it would have essentially ended Congress as a co-equal branch of government. Just think about that for a moment. This could reshape the entire Republican Party, and this is coming from a respected conservative voice. Former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger mentioned that this moment could mark the beginning of the end for Trump's stranglehold on the GOP. When conservative leaders from both the establishment and insurgent wings start rejecting MAGA proposals, that's the moment to really pay attention. Now, here's the kicker. So, let's break down what this Republican Civil War could mean, because it's not just a captivating political story. It has serious consequences for how our government operates. First up is the immediate political fallout. Johnson is already facing significant backlash due to his handling of the spending negotiations, and his leadership is taking a hit. Republican representatives are getting anxious about the upcoming 2025 elections, which is definitely adding to the tension. The revelation that Johnson was willing to grant unprecedented powers to the executive branch? And honestly, that's not the best look for a party that claims to support limited government. Most folks in America have a good deal of respect for constitutional principles as a vital part of our system, even if they don't always agree on interpretation. Democrats are definitely planning to take advantage of this situation. They'll argue that Republicans are so beholden to Trump that they're willing to destroy the Constitution itself, and they'll have Republican committee chairs' own words backing up those claims. This is going to be Exhibit A in proving that MAGA extremism threatens basic democratic governance. You can expect to see this chaos popping up in Democratic campaign ads, speeches, and debates. Now, let's touch on what this means for the Republican Party itself. Johnson has been trying hard to keep the GOP united behind Trump's agenda, wanting it to be viewed as a cohesive governing party. But by pushing this extreme proposal, he's exposed deep fractures within the conference. Traditional conservatives and MAGA loyalists are now poised to battle for the soul of the party, implying different visions for America's future, which complicates things for the GOP's image as a viable governing party. Yet, the rebels probably felt they had no other choice. If they stayed silent while Johnson undermined the Constitution, conservatism's credibility would take an even bigger hit. This situation shines a massive spotlight on what the Republican Party actually stands for. At the heart of the issue is whether the GOP will remain committed to constitutional principles or just become a vehicle for Trump's personal ambitions. If Trump gets his way on that, it could totally change how American democracy operates. The founders designed our system with separation of powers specifically to prevent any individual from accumulating too much authority. They knew from studying history that concentrated power leads to tyranny. But Trump has always been uncomfortable with those limitations. He craves total control over everything. If Republicans abandon their constitutional principles, that's a significant boost to authoritarianism, and it opens the door for future presidents to ignore Congress entirely. So, the implications of this fight reach far beyond just Johnson's speakership. It's about shaping the structure of American government for many years to come. Each time Republicans cave to Trump's demands, sacrifice principles, or attack constitutional norms, it weakens our democratic systems. It starts making behavior that used to be completely unacceptable feel normal. Think about it. If Johnson can push through provisions that gut congressional authority, what's to stop the next speaker from doing worse? If Republicans can just abandon separation of powers whenever Trump wants, what's to prevent complete democratic breakdown? These actions don't just disappear when Trump leaves office. They become precedents that erode democracy, and that's pretty dangerous. Democracy relies on those norms and institutions, assuming that people in power will respect constitutional boundaries, even when it's inconvenient. When those norms crumble, democracy itself starts to falter. Looking ahead to government funding and the 2025 elections, it's clear that all of this is going to have some significant effects. We're still 11 days from a potential shutdown, but the dynamics being set now are bound to influence how things go. If the story playing out is one of Republicans in chaos, unable to even agree among themselves, that spells trouble for their electoral prospects. Voters usually don't reward dysfunction and extremism. They want competent governance. Right now, Johnson isn't offering either of those, so expect Democrats to champion a message focused on responsible governance. After years of MAGA chaos, there are folks who believe that if you vote Democratic, Congress will actually start functioning again. They're promising no more constitutional crises or authoritarian power grabs, just normal democratic governance. That message might just hit home for a lot of voters, including some traditional Republicans. So, here's the deal. Republican committee chairs just declared Johnson's MAGA-backed plan constitutionally indefensible and blocked it from advancing. This isn't just about budget negotiations. It's about whether the Republican Party will defend the Constitution or surrender to Trump's authoritarian impulses. If Johnson succeeds in his power grab, then we're basically saying separation of powers doesn't matter anymore. That would mean we're stepping into a completely new realm where presidents can ignore Congress entirely. It's about so much more than just government funding. It's about whether we genuinely have a functioning constitutional system or if we're just one party's vote away from authoritarian rule. So, keep an eye on this. Things are just heating up. The shutdown deadline is approaching, Republicans are fracturing, and Johnson's speakership is on life support. The next few days are going to be crucial. The stakes have never been higher, the evidence stronger, and the outcome more unpredictable.